And to get us started, I would like to introduce the Executive Director of the Milwaukee Turners, Emilio Dottore. Thank you.
I love starting a forum with the scent of tacos. It's beautiful. Welcome, friends. It's good to see you all again. I think that this is going to be an incredibly important hybrid Vel Phillips Forum here with the Milwaukee Turners. As Jahan mentioned, I'm Emilio Dottore, the Executive Director, and we're really excited to bring everybody together virtually and in person. Today's nonpartisan virtual forum is being sponsored in part by the Milwaukee County Office of Equity, MICA, the Public Welfare Foundation, Wisconsin Voices, and the Hertzfeld Foundation. So just a couple of quick logistics for those of you that have joined us here or there. In addition to the forum being held in Turner Hall, which is a national city and county historic landmark, the forum is being broadcast on both Zoom and the Milwaukee Turners Facebook page. So we invite you to share the live feed to your own Facebook pages using the link provided in the chat so that others might share and learn from this important conversation. It's being recorded and the edited version will be shared, but you'll immediately be able to see it. For our friends on Zoom, captioning is available, so click on the live transcript CC icon to use captioning or to turn it off. Then click Show Subtitle, and if you click View Full Transcript, you'll be able to see the full captioning stream. ASL interpreters are also available on Zoom today. Please contact Chrissy using the Zoom chat if you need assistance with this. After the panel, there will be an opportunity for the public to ask questions. And we have a great panel. We have licensed professional counselor Simone Kilgore, health prevention coordinator from Milwaukee County, Venetia Kendrick, community leader and co-founder of program The Parks, Vaughn Mays, and longtime youth program leader and Alderwoman Charlene Moore. For viewers on Facebook Live and Zoom, you can ask your questions in the comments or chat, and we'll share those with our panelists. If you are here and you'd like to ask a question, just please raise your hand if you don't already have an index card, and one of our team will bring it over to you. So let's dig in. Today's forum, Root Causes of Youth Violence. So high-profile car chases and shootouts with police on Highway 43, 14-year-olds with multiple gun charges, misguided curfews, Kia boys, no more drivers, education in public schools, youth centers closed at 5 p.m. during the summers, limited job opportunities, adults no longer spending time with young people. This is the dramatic picture of Milwaukee painted often by our elected officials and in national and local media. And sometimes this is all that the United States thinks of Milwaukee due to this perpetuation. We make headlines for sporadic traumatic incidents, but not only is this not the full picture, these are just symptoms of something much larger and something more difficult to pull apart. Many of those in power seem eager to point fingers at who is to blame in reaction to whatever big thing just occurred. And understandably, but disappointingly, sometimes it's people in our own neighborhoods who are the ones who are fastest to cast shame on someone else's child and to call for attempted Band-Aid solutions like more policing. I'm saying this on the heels of Milwaukee Police Chief Norman's plaintive call for community assistance despite the fact that the MPD budget is over $410 million. A lack of creative vision and partnership only compounds the problem and adds to the political theater. The city of Milwaukee, for example, is sitting on millions of unspent ARPA funds that were supposed to go to prevent youth violence and support gun violence prevention. $3 million of that was slated to be spent in President Perez's district, where a 14-year-old boy was arrested after killing a motorcyclist while driving a stolen car. It seems essential at this late stage that we need a solution that is more than the tired tough-on-crime trope that everyone trots out. There's a broader issue of disinvestment in youth, by the city of Milwaukee specifically. But this is all amplified by the media and by the reflex of political institutions blaming one another during budget time. You know, it costs Milwaukee taxpayers over $460,000 per year to incarcerate one child. So let that sink in. Imagine how we could promote opportunities for children's successes with that type of investment. And at Vel Phillips alone, there are anywhere from 140 to 200 children incarcerated there each day. On the other hand, it costs approximately $127,000 per year to have someone on community supervision post-incarceration. That is incredibly expensive. And really, think about it for a moment. Imagine if you had $460,000 to spend each year on each of your children. Imagine if you earned $127,000 per year. What would you do? How would you imagine your life and what you could give to your babies? Just this week, we were greeted by the debacle of an $88,000 don't speed piece of art car that broke down. How many high school-based driver's ed programs could have been funded with those dollars? So I did a little math the other day, and according to current DOT and Milwaukee Department of Rec registration information, that could have taught 587 students. So 88,000 would have taught 587,000 students. But before we talk about real solutions, let's establish a baseline. Let's explore how developmental events, lack of support, and other factors increase the likelihood of violence and antisocial actions in young people. And let's all have that conversation without the usual blame and shame language that may be cathartic but is not productive. It matters how we frame and talk about young people and their families. It matters that we teach ourselves to hold multiple truths at once. That a young person may have done something hurtful, but they are not irredeemable. That a young person's brain may not be fully developed, but they can still be held accountable for their actions. And perhaps most difficult of all for us parents and other caretakers, that the young people doing these things are not different from our own young humans. They are just in different circumstances, with different supports and different choices. It is our collective responsibility to ask ourselves how we got here and how we can move to a better place for ourselves and for our children. Blaming and punishing young people and their parents and putting them in situations where they have less access to resources is simply not working. I encourage all of us in this conversation to sit with feelings that will arise when we try to confront big, seemingly unsolvable problems, because they really aren't unsolvable if we work together and if we let real data and real human experience inform our decisions instead of what is politically expedient, and hold our elected officials accountable to what we think will work. Milwaukee is a beautiful and resilient place. We made this world, and we can make another. How did we get here, and where are the solutions to the symptoms that we see? How can we as a community refocus the predominant and harmful narratives about young people and their families to have more productive conversations? How long can we continue to punish children as a treatment for the symptoms of what is obviously a deeper root cause? Is it possible to identify what contributes to these situations and treat that as opposed to incarcerating our way out of everything? These are just a few of the questions that we hope to explore throughout this forum. And I know you are not all here to listen to my editorial. So what I'm going to do is, again, welcome you all and turn it over to our guests. I'm hoping we can go down the line and maybe as a soft starter, each of you can tell us broadly in about a minute each who you are and what you do. We can pick on the older woman. I've known her long.
You want me to go first? Want me to go first?
Sure.
I can go first. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much to Milwaukee Turners and this Vel Phillips Forum for the invitation. I'm so honored to be on this panel with my esteemed colleagues, which I have known and loved and worked with for so many years. My name is Charlene Moore, and I am the newly elected 10th District Alderwoman. And thank you so much. Some people, are like, oh, should I call you Alderwoman? I said, no, my name is Charlene. You can call me Charlene. That's who Miss Charlene to my young people watching them, Miss Charlene, but to the adults, Charlene. But I myself and Reggie Moore co-founded an organization called Urban Underground, and that's where sort of we got our start in, even before then, working with young people, and I've just been honored to be in a city, and I have to say, I love my city. I love Milwaukee. I love growing up. I'm a transplant. I was born and raised in Jamaica, and so I came to this country in the early 80s, and I love this city. And I know that it's going to take all of us, including myself, to be a part of that change that we want to see. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am Vaughn Mays, community activist, violence prevention specialist. I run a number of youth serving organizations and initiatives across the city. Just as a person that's a subject matter expert, because I was one of these young people that we talk about now. So this is one of the reasons why I work with that population. I understand it. I still go through a lot of the ills and issues myself, and now as a father with a couple of teenagers, seeing some of the same stuff. And I've always said it's our duty as people. Our children have to go outside with other people's children, and so as parents, it's our duty to make this the best world possible we can for not only ourselves and our children, but for everybody else's. So, again, just someone who is always looking to assist people with advocacy, to assist people with making this world where we need it to be. So.
Hey, I'm Simone Kilgore. I'm a licensed professional counselor here in Milwaukee. Thank you to Emilio Turner Hall and the Vel Phillips Forum for having me. My vested interest is that as a, I didn't pick the profession, I think it picked me, but as a person who believes in the idea of hope and the possibility, which is something that you mentioned in your editorial that I enjoyed. I just believe that it's my responsibility to keep sharing the message of hope and this idea that collectively we can do this work. I am a mother of 2 adult children that I did raise in Milwaukee and was extremely committed and a parent of Urban Underground. And so I just tried to turn it off at times, but I feel like I'm part of the problem if I'm not trying to help aid youth in this community. So I'm thankful for this invitation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Vanisha Kendrick. I serve as the Health Prevention Coordinator for Milwaukee County Behavioral Health Services, Community Access to Recovery Services. In my role, I have the opportunity of working with community organizations that focus on substance misuse and mental health, and overseeing a grant, which is our Better Ways to Cope grant, and shout out to Milwaukee Turners for being one of our grantees. I have the esteemed privilege of working closely with those 15 organizations and understanding the work that they're doing. And there's so much more that comes along with that, but y'all don't want to hear my resume, so I'm not going to do that. But following in the vein of my colleagues that's on the panel, I am the mother also of a 14-year-old. And when you are watching what's going on, when you're paying attention to the things that they have access to that my generation did not have access to. Social media was something that we didn't have access to. Internet was just coming out when I was in high school. It did not transform to what it is now. And so watching what our babies have access to is interesting, but yet sometimes alarming. And so I'm grateful to be able to sit on this panel tonight as we discuss and uncover the root causes to youth violence. And hopefully we can come up with some solutions at the table, but also for you all that's sitting out in the audience.
Thank you all. It's really my privilege to sit here with you. I guess we should probably start with some context. There's a lot of finger pointing when a tragedy involving young people occurs, and it seems that people habitually point to a bad kid, a tragic occurrence, or bad parenting. But this framing isn't really productive at all, and we seldom address how a child or community get to these points. I was hoping, Ms. Kilgore, are you able to start us off by speaking to maybe some of the emotional and psychological development of a child, so that we can put this in a broader context?
Sure, yeah. And it can be robust, so I'm gonna try to condense it so that we can all best understand. And I wanna start out by sharing, oftentimes when people talk about emotional and psychological development of others, right? Specifically our youth, we tend to hear the information, and then when the behavior shows up that we're not agreeing with, we move that psychological thing out of the way. And I'm saying that you cannot discard it. You cannot discard a child's upbringing, environment, attachment style, which there are 4 psychological attachment styles. Either the child is secure attachment, where there's this belief that my parental folks, the people who love me and take care of me, are going to continue to do that for me as I develop in life. That support changes over time because youth change. And so they don't need bottles at the age of 15, but they do need your eye contact and your attention and your time and your commitment and your discipline and your interest. And so that's secure attachment. Avoidant, anxious attachment is when a child is unsure if a parent is going to be consistent. And so not only do they miss these opportunities of connection and understanding, and it deters their development, they also enter the world as young people, teenagers and young adults, with this inability to connect and to trust and to understand, and then that means I don't quite trust me. Avoidant is even further down the line as problematic because it means I avoid attachment. I'm not familiar with it. As a matter of fact, if I get a mentor, like a lot of people say, why don't they just get mentors? Or why don't they just get support? They don't trust support. They don't trust mentorship. They don't trust adults. Because that very early lesson of trust and connection and commitment to this thing that I call a relationship and the dynamics that should be happening, they've never experienced. So if I enter their life as a teacher, as a therapist, as a neighbor, as somebody who's interested from urban underground, as Charlene and Reggie have many times, as Vaughn does every day, it takes a very long time for that child to get to a place where they have an attachment that is secure enough to trust this person. And so if I don't trust you, if I don't know you, and I come to you and say, hey, come to my house and spend the weekend, I got you, you don't need any money, you shouldn't trust me. I don't know you, and you don't know me, so you shouldn't believe me. But we want youth to automatically believe adults who are interested in them. And I'm telling you, that time is commitment and it's time. That's why Vaughn could talk about the evolution of the work, because he was one of those youth. He understands what they need, but he also is committed to being present on an everyday basis when a lot of us are at home resting. The kind of attachment that a child needs is when you're not tired, you care. When you are tired, you care. When you're sleepy and you're overwhelmed or you're out of work, you still care. And so for a lot of adults that are facing complex situations in their lives, whether it's abuse or trauma, I was raised in trauma, so I parent in trauma. We all either parent just like our parents, or we're trying to avoid something that they have done, so we want to parent differently. Whether you know it or not, it's a fact. I either want to be just like my mom or dad, or I want to be totally opposite. Which one is it? And so we're talking about youth that are battling with identity, same-sex parents in the home with healed identities and purpose that they can share with me. And then we want to meet kids in the community and we want them to have purpose and identity when they've never seen it mirrored.
Come on.
It is our responsibility to mirror that. And then the last type of attachment I want to talk about is disorganized, because you can kind of have a mix of all of it, but disorganized is the key word. There's no real place to land with this emotion regulation we want them to have this ability to self-soothe and settle. And so when you are brought up in these attachments that are unsecure or anxious, you can develop into all these kind of behaviors that are seeking that attachment, seeking connection and love, seeking attention and acceptance. And so if I'm not getting it at home, people, I know this is cliche, but they're going to find it somewhere. It's our responsibility to help people and help youth understand what is happening internally and psychologically, which is why I promote therapy. Yes, I do. I'm a therapist, right? And again, I say to people, my state license is licensed professional counselor, but I am a trauma therapist. I work with most survivors of trauma, whatever that trauma looks like. And so it's brought me into this world of doing more youth work because they are experiencing trauma at a rapid rate. To talk a little bit about what my colleague Venetia mentioned is, I don't recall ever meeting as much trauma as these youth have while I was growing up. I had protections, and I had people that guided me, and I was slightly naive for the most part, right? I just didn't know the problems of the world, and so it is the impact of social media and all the other things, but also this lack of care by community adults that are either in my family or without. I don't have a right to ignore a child's need. I am ultimately adding to the community problem, instead of just simply saying, hey, how can I help you, or what's going on, or giving them a familiar face or a smile. It is a responsibility. And so if I'm brought up in an environment that is disorganized and unhealthy, then everything internally in me, the way I think and process, the way I come to reasoning, what we talk about, the prefrontal cortex of the brain, the amygdala is where the children make decisions. Where the amygdala is not fully formed in young people, specifically men, until age 27. That's when y'all kind of start making reasonable decisions, sometimes, kind of, sort of. And for young women, it's around the age of 16, 17, where you can say, do you think that that was a right decision for you or not so right, you know? The language matters. Saying things like wrong or bad, the language matters.
Yeah.
So right decision for you or not so right is the thing. Our ability to make sound decisions comes from who we saw make sound decisions. And if I grew up in a household where the decisions of my parents were erratic, disorganized, dysfunctional, abusive, impulsive, delicious. Impulsivity is an issue. I'm gonna just mirror that same behavior. That's all I know. And so it is my responsibility to be extremely patient with youth that come from those environments, so that I can best hear what the need is. And sometimes hearing is what is not being said. In disorganized thoughts, I can't clearly always share with you what my need is. So we'll say, the kids should just say what they want. Sometimes they don't know how to form those sentences. They've never had to be that vulnerable or that clear or think that deeply. The impulsivity takes over. And so being clear about sometimes I think we're facing this issue and we come up with the blame and the things you mentioned because we're pointing the finger elsewhere. And it is absolutely within all of us to do the work that can turn a child around, 2 children, 3 children. Before you know it, you got a legacy of helping kids. And you can count on your hand. I can count on my hand and my feet. How many people I know that I've tried to help, and I can see the outcome. It is commitment, and it is outside of everything else I do. But it's necessary for the change to happen.
Thank you. And if anybody on the panel is wondering, people will keep texting me and coming over to me with questions. This is great. Everybody has questions. And thank you for setting up that baseline of the formation, which affects everything else. You know, we often hear also a lot about what's gone wrong, what's going wrong. We can't not think about it, even if we're trying to heal everything that's around us. So maybe we can go down the line with everybody. What are some initiatives that the county, city, and community groups are implementing well that are helping provide opportunities or changing systems for young people?
I'll hop in.
Go ahead, Venetia.
So just as I mentioned previously, through Milwaukee County, through the Community Access to Recovery Services area, we have our Better Ways to Cope grant, which again provides funding for 15 organizations, and that's just as of recently. Previously, we funded 6 organizations, and this is not new. This is something that has been established for a few years now. We also have our CARS substance use prevention grant, where we have 3 organizations that are currently funded to do work around substance use and mental health. And I'm gonna go back to Better Ways to Cope for a quick second, because when I'm looking at the work that's being done just in that space, it's not just focused on adults, it's also focused on our young people. And when a young person is in need, and here's the thing, because Simone said some things that was very, very valid. Every single organization that we fund, the great thing that I love about them is that they're patient. They're patient to work with the communities that they're serving. They're patient enough to know, hey, if this, and I can name one organization in particular, which is Changing Hands Mentoring. This is an organization, fairly new, but 2 young women run this organization. And to work with young boys, young girls, around what it is that they're dealing with, especially as it's focusing on substance misuse and prevention of that. And when I'm talking to them and I'm getting, an understanding of the work that they're doing and realizing that young people are resorting to vaping. We know that they're vaping. We know that they're smoking weed. We know that they're popping pills. We know that they're doing all of this. But when you hear a young person say, this mentoring group helped me to remove my need or my desire to smoke or to vape or to pop, whatever that, or to drink, whatever that is, when you hear that, it's amazing. It's a blessing because like Simone said, they don't really trust adults. Young people really do not trust adults. I'm gonna go back and I'm getting off kilter for a quick second, but in my previous role, I focused on suicide prevention within the City of Milwaukee Health Department. When a child that's 10 makes a decision to kill themselves, it's a hurtful situation. When you hear the parent or the guardian or the caretaker they have to wrap their mind around the fact that their child is gone and that parent or that guardian is saying, what did I do wrong as a parent? Please excuse me, because it's something that I really hold dear to my heart. And I hate when our young people have to be in that position. I hate when they can't come to us and talk to us because they already feel like we're going to judge them because of what they've experienced. Our young people are suffering from abandonment. Can I have a real talk moment? Because I dealt with abandonment. Our young people are dealing with rejection. Can I have a real talk moment? Because I dealt with rejection. And as a child, I had to figure out how do I get past this? Some of the initiatives or programs that are out now wasn't out when I was around. Now we had, what was that called? Hang Tough? Or this is drugs, this is your brain on drugs. You had the scare tactics, right? For some of us, real talk, it worked for me. It worked for me, but it didn't work for a lot of my classmates. And so I'll stop Emilio because I'll keep talking. But going back, those are some of the initiatives and programs that Milwaukee County offers.
Yeah, I'll jump in really quickly, and just say that just being on the city level, and this is very new for me. So, I was on the outside looking in, now I'm on the inside looking out. That working for the city, there needs, and Amelia, you talked about the budget, right? The budget, our city budget is really supposed to be this moral document on what our priorities and focus are. And when I think about those priorities and focus, young people are really not even the center at that. It's a little spackle here and it's a little spackle there. We have Summer Earn and Learn, and they added Camp Rise to that a few years ago. Wonderful program for elementary and middle, I think it was or middle school age young people. There's not. Then we have CDBG, Community Development Block Grants, that also provides funding to different groups. But, in my opinion, I believe there's just really not a coordinated effort here when we talk about the synergy of what the city is doing, what we could do better, as well as, the partnerships and collaborations that we could also have with Milwaukee County. This is an all hands on deck moment for us. We're past the moment where, oh, well, let folks figure it out. Let's spackle a little this here and let's spackle a little bit there. There are groups that are, collaboratively, pulling data together, the VR FAST group and the CJC, the Community Justice Council. And so how do we look at that information and say, okay, where are the gaps? Where are the needs? Where do we need to provide more resources? So just being at the city level, I believe that we can definitely do a lot better when it comes to youth programming and just resources and how we coordinate and get those resources out.
I'm gonna sneak in and say one sentence, because I agree with everything Charlotte and Venetia said, but I also want us to start thinking about innovative ways to attract children to
Yes.
programming, because it cannot be programming as it has been in the
go.
past. It is not working.
Yes.
And so common sense is, if it's not working, change it.
Change it.
That is the key thing, and I'm glad you said that, because that is the conversation that we started this work upon. And so I'll name some things. The Reasons for Hope grant through GMF, Milwaukee County, Milwaukee Parks Foundation, even Wisconsin Voices. Entities like this opening themselves up to being supports and partners, and in some instances, sponsors of new ideals and grassroots community efforts. Even the concept of finding balance, starting this conversation about people who always get all the money versus these grassroots or small organizations or even resident-led efforts that are out doing work that is efficient and effective, but they never get any money or never even get considered. Having those conversations has been key to some of this that we're seeing. Places like CRC and even Vel Phillips opening their doors up to new programming and supports and access to young and incarcerated individuals, to stakeholders and influencers. The fact that we are able to go in and have access with these young people, because we could talk about new prisons, we could talk about new locations, but who has access to them? Again, when you talk about incarceration, people think of incarceration, it's supposed to be about reform. It's supposed to be about changing a person or correcting the behavior, but it's not about that. And if we don't put those things in place and we're just incarcerating people, they're going to come out the same or worse. I'm telling you from experience. And so if these things are not happening, if we're not looking into and investing in new concepts or new ideals or new people at the table who have things to offer, then we're going to be in a bad place. And the fact that some of these things are already happening or starting to happen, or even there's a conversation, is the reason we cannot miss in this conversation nationally and even locally. Crime has been going down. It may not seem like it has, but in a lot of aspects, crime has been going down. And that tells you that a lot of this stuff we're talking about is a reason why that is. It's a reason why that being present in those moments where people are making these bad decisions or no decision at all, having someone in the midst of that saying, think about this, or don't do that, or being mediators, or being there to be a deterrent to those different situations, period, is working. And a lot of that data, you don't get the data from people who don't get shot or killed. But lives saved, that is a real number.
Come on.
And that's a number that I feel that at some point needs to be prioritized and needs to be more promoted, because this is the reason, and these are the ways that things are changing. Even though we get the negative shoved in our face all the time, but I promise you that if you really look at it and if you're out there to see the positives and to know that the work is being done, you will definitely know the difference.
Thank you. I'm getting stacks of questions. We're going to be here till midnight. Charlene, you and Venetia both touched on something, which leads into our next question. Given the disconnect between actual crime rates and the way media coverage and other factors can scare people into thinking that youth violence is out of control, how can we depoliticize decisions around this topic so that policymakers in the state and the city and the county levels aren't politically incentivized into making reactionary changes that actually in the long run harm our communities? In other words, how can we make sure policymakers are using real data in their decision making instead of giving into or contributing to fear mongering? And that's nothing new. That always happens.
No. Yeah. Can I just say, a lot of this is about experiences. I've gone into my work because, and I don't, because the news clips and the articles, it makes you like, oh my gosh, like everybody get your guns, lock your doors, and right, like that's what that fear drives us to.
Yeah.
And when we see young people walk down the street, we clutch our bag, we cross the street, that's what fear does to human beings when you don't know truth. And so a big part of that, Emilio, is really having each of us have experiences working with, and connecting with young people right? Whether you go down to Vel Phillips and you say, hey, I would love to, well, call them first. You know, all of our teachers should be able to have a tour of Vel Phillips so that they understand the connection with the classroom and where some of their young people are going, right? And if they don't have that experience, they could teach differently. However, if we transform that to have policymakers and folks that are in positions of power and community folks to understand simply what it is that we're dealing with, because there's a lot more young people that are doing the right things than it is not. And I can sit here and name a bunch of them for you. There's a lot more young people that are doing the right thing than is not. How do I know that? Because of experiences, the spaces that I go, the connections that I have with community folks that are supporting young people. So we got to start, I think a big part of that, Emilio, we got to start with those experiences. Yeah. I'll stop there.
Again, that is the catalyst for a lot of this. Sherman Park, I'm known as the Sherman Park guy. One of the main reasons why it got into my spirit to step in and even get involved with the stuff that was going on in Sherman Park, even previous to the uprising and all that different stuff, right, is because I saw, it was the first time that I really saw the change and the narrative start to shift into the demonization of our young people as a group, as a total group. And I saw the danger in that. And that has been carried on since then. And again, when you talk about a community and a community divided and fractured, that has a lot to do with it, how things are thrown into our face. If you always hear about young people when they're doing something wrong, when you're always seeing images of young people doing something wrong, this is another reason why the adults, and especially our elders, really want nothing to do with them because of that fear. And so we shifted into the work to start to take apart that narrative and undo that. It's just so much that's going on in that aspect that has to do with it. And perception means a lot, because when you talk about young people who see how we think about them, right?
Yes.
We are the adults. Or then you have law enforcement, or you have the systems, the grown people who are supposed to be the decision makers and the people with the wisdom, right? But they see how we talk about them. They see that we don't value their life. When you say lock them up, kill them, or bring the death penalty back, they see you say that. So if you as an adult or an authority figure can say that and devalue their life, why are they supposed to value anybody else's life? I see grown people who may boost or buy from boosters, who will turn around and say that young person should be X, Y, and Z because they're in a stolen car. It's both stealing. So if you indulge in stealing or benefiting from stealing, why are you mad at me for being how can they compute the difference between that? We're naming streets Vel Phillips, and we're naming streets after Mr. Carter, right? But when one of their friends died, whether in the act of doing something good or bad, and they named the area after them and start a pain-based group after them, what's the difference to them, right? So we have to understand the perception and the images and the messages that we are putting out there as adults, that they see us. Again, they have access to news and media. They have access to our conversations and a lot that we didn't have access to as young people when we were younger. We didn't hear or be in the midst of grown people's conversations or politics or everything that's going on, but everything is right there for them to see. And so we have to be very careful about our part and how they see us and the rest of the world, because a lot of it is our fault.
Yeah, and just piggybacking too, Charlene mentioned Vel Phillips and tours and teachers, and Vaughn kind of did the same thing, mentioning how adults show up in front of children. And one of the things you asked earlier, Emilio, about development is when children are not psychologically and emotionally where they should be for their age, based on environment and nurturing and lack of nurturing and all of that. One of the things that a key component that a lot of youth are missing is empathy and perceptive taking, how they perceive. And so again, going with what Charlene and Vaughn said, if the perception is, as a teacher, I have no idea what you're dealing with at home, perhaps I haven't gone through it, and I get that, right? But if I don't show any empathy or concern or interest, there's no way as a child, and specifically a child of color, is going to trust you minus you having empathy. Minus you saying that my perception of this may be skewed. Go figure, Simone doesn't know all things. Because if I didn't grow up the same, or if I haven't had the same lessons, then my perception shouldn't be yours. And so this expectation that youth should do all these things when we have never walked in their shoes.
That's it.
We lack the empathy necessary to care for them, to share with them, to connect with them. And then my perception of this child is if they are less valuable,
Yeah.
not a person in this society that could be beneficial for us, have no gifts and talents, how dare I? So until we figure out how to lead in empathy, to question our own perception and my own belief of what should be happening, we're not going to get anywhere. I'm going to say it one more time. Until we learn to lead with empathy
Come on.
and to question your own perception
Yes.
of how you perceive this person's life to be and what you think that their value is and all that, we're doing a disservice. And sometimes I'm doing professional development in schools. They probably are going to ask me not to anymore, because I have said to a group of teachers at different levels of the education system, if you can't look at a child or a student and provide the gift of hope in how you see them before you talk to them, before you try to get them to open a book and learn anything, how dare I stand before your child and not care about them? We don't get that pass. It's over for that. They need us. And so if I'm in this field, I ought to do a great service or do something different. It's just that simple.
So there was something that Charlene just said, and to your point, Charlene, what I wanted to add to that was she said something around we are afraid of young people, or sometimes we allow ourselves to be afraid where we see them and we clutch our purse and we're trying to hurry up and walk real fast, or we cross the street. So that's what we do, right? But while we're thinking, or while we're afraid of them, who's to say that they're not afraid of us? And that's something that made me think, like, they may be afraid of you just like you may be afraid of them. For what reason? I don't know. But when Charlene said that, it made me think about the fear that they have. Also, another word I want to add to what you said, Simone, because Simone said empathy, it also makes me think about compassion. Do you really have compassion for our young people in regards to what they're experiencing? If you've never experienced being abandoned by your mother, you don't know how that feels for a young person. If you've never been in a situation, and going back to what Charlene said about experiences, and if you've never been in that space to where you've been molested by a family member, and now that trauma, and I need you to talk about this in regards to the body keep score.
All right.
So I need you to touch that too.
Okay.
But when it comes down to all of that this young person is dealing with, and you're afraid to walk past them, that's hurtful.
Yeah.
When I think about my 14-year-old, and as a young woman, or as a young girl that's growing into a young woman, that just because of her age and her skin color, she's already looked down upon. So I have to be who I have to be, regardless of my trauma, and instill in her, regardless of what happened to me as a kid. Because I have to let my child know that she is loved.
Yes.
Not was loved, she is loved. She will continue to be loved. But the same love I give to my kid is the love that I have to give to that child in Vel Phillips.
Yeah.
That's the same love I have to give to the child that's walking across the street, or that's walking in front of me. And do you know that a smile can change somebody's day?
Yeah.
Even a young person. I had the opportunity of going to school down south in Alabama, and one thing I can say, ooh, the culture is different. It's different because up here, I wasn't used to walking past people and saying, hi, good morning, how are you? When I came back home, I was like, man, I'm speaking to people, ain't nobody speaking back to me. But that's the culture, right? So if you see a young person tomorrow and you walk past them and you just say, hey, how you doing? You never know what that young person may say. Real quickly, I gotta give a shout out because as we're talking about depoliticizing youth violence and whatnot in regards to politics, I gotta give a shout out to the Milwaukee County Department Health and Human Services when we're talking about the credible messengers. When you're talking about organizations like 411 for Life, they're doing the work. How many of you in here, but besides those of you that represent those organizations, how many of you here know about the credible messengers? Raise your hand. Only a few. How many of you here know about 411 for Life and the work that they do? So maybe 30% of the room. In a positive light. So my question to you is, and I guess the call to action that I put out to everyone that's here and even those that are watching, how do you connect with these organizations to get more involved, to help shape the lens of what our babies are experiencing, but instead of complaining, being a part of the solution?
Yeah.
But that's where the advocacy comes in too, with money.
Exactly.
Because what we're all talking about too is resources. So to expand these programs, to provide organizations with the resources that they need, what we're talking about is money.
Yes.
Go ahead, Emilio.
I don't even need other questions. I'm just like, you're all here because you care. You've been doing this for a long time for the right reasons, and it's important. This whole forum is always about coming to solutions. And in addition to the stack of questions, I've written another 200 in my head. But something that all of you have alluded to really is kind of like this feeling of ignorance, this feeling of powerlessness that young people and adults both experience in different ways, which turns into fear. And so a lot of people that are watching the news, reading the news, listening to the news, often feel like they're viewing a play about which they have no control. It's powerlessness. So what are some ways that the folks watching here today and online can get involved in being a part of a solution? How do they get involved with any of what you've suggested as a potential remedy?
I would just easily like to say, Vanisha just gave us 2 ways to get involved. I mean, reach out to these organizations. I think Charlene and Vaughn said the same thing. Get into the community. You mentioned neighborhoods and how neighbors can sometimes view children in neighborhoods. But I mean, there's so many youth-serving organizations that need volunteers, people that show up every Wednesday to shoot the breeze with the kids, to teach them how to play chess. If you are a knitter, if you know that you want to teach somebody about how to better understand geometry, go to these organizations, find out what days you can volunteer. If you can't volunteer, put your money behind it. Another thing you can do is if you don't know the situation, stop talking about it like that.
Thank you.
I'm just going to simply
Thank
say,
you.
stop putting our kids down.
Yes.
Stop it. Stop being afraid. Stop not giving eye contact. Stop not having empathy and compassion and concern. Those are things you can do for the free. After we leave here today, you can start. You don't have to wait till Wednesday. You can do it today. And so some things are just common sense.
Yeah.
Some things don't take any effort. My mom would always say it's not enough to know better.
Yeah.
You have to do better.
Yeah.
And so if you get information tonight and then you don't activate it, I don't really know what we're doing here.
Yeah.
It's a struggle sometimes to be on panels and to be in forums and to have these repetitive conversations because people leave unchanged.
Yeah.
Listen.
I don't want to leave here unchanged. I want to learn something new today. I want to impart something new tomorrow, tonight. And so it's very sometimes difficult to keep having the same conversations when people leave the events with no change.
Yeah.
We're change agents. Look that up, figure out what that means for you, because for everybody, the involvement and the input can be something that will make a lasting change. And that's how change happens. It takes everybody and everybody's efforts.
And if I can just add to that, thank you so much, Ms. Simone. Sometimes people think that they also have to do these sort of grandiose things, right? Sometimes it's just starting within our own families.
Come on, Charlene.
You have nieces, nephews, cousins. You may be an uncle or an aunt to somebody, a grandparent to somebody. Like let's also start with our own inner circle. They would talk to do we know who the person next door is? Do we know their name? Do we know some of the things that they might need, right? So, starting even just from the inner circle, if you're part of a faith-based organization, what is your church doing, or your mosque, right? Start very simple. The city actually gave over my list of summer activities, to the city, and they turned it into Hello Summer. And it was a plethora of activities, because people will say, oh, there's nothing. I go to community meetings all the time, and people are like, there's nothing for our kids to do. And I said, ma'am, I'm gonna have to push back on you a little bit, because there's plenty in this city. I love me some Milwaukee. Because whether you want art, music, sports, cooking, you name it, there's an organization or two or three that's providing that opportunity for our young people. So start from within. Please start with your families first. Please, please, please start with that next door neighbor, the person across the street, the folks that are in your inner circle, that sort of connection. Those are the things that are going to make a huge difference here in this city for us looking from within and starting with our own.
I like the point that you made about politics, because I always say politics is one of the worst things in this city. It kills more people than anything. As an individual who isn't always looked at in the best light, right? When you talk politically, a lot of people feel like not supporting is somehow affecting me. Like I don't want to help Vaughn, right? But not helping Vaughn is really not helping all the people that are counting on me to help them. Because when I do grants or when I go for this or that, there's nothing in the budget that goes in my pocket most times. So it's the cross promotion of all the different organizations. Like, I beg organizations to give me their flyers. So when I go do doors, I can let people know, because again, as a teenager, I never knew about any, aside from the Boys and Girls Club, and that was because I worked upstairs from one. And at that time, you can just go in there, and as long as you weren't causing trouble, they let you come. But aside from that, I didn't know where else to go. I didn't know what else was out here. And most doors you knock on, they probably have never heard of me or Urban Underground or certain organizations, which you would think they would, but access to information or somebody that is working with these families to let them know what is out here, that makes a whole lot of difference sometimes, because people just don't know. They're so caught up in what's happening every day at their lives, they don't have the time to look and figure out and chase down somebody to figure out, what's out here for them. So the one thing that I would say is just educate yourselves about what and who is out here, and spread that information to whoever the 6 degrees of separation. So if there was a way that everybody in Milwaukee, or a huge percentage of Milwaukee, could have the same information, that would do so much for our city. But we just have these pockets where some people get it and most people don't. And that is one of the biggest problems. And again, just having the innovation to not make decisions based off who you don't like. Not make decisions, right. I call it the buddy system. I'm just, me and my homies, whoever I'm good with, I'm gonna just promote them. And it just does such a disservice for the larger, because it's not a one size fits all. Most of the stuff that we do is because we have always been referred to as the program that catches people that falls in the cracks. So this organization may not want this young person or care to deal with this population. We get all those people who don't fit anywhere else. And so, but in that same sense, when they ask us what else is out here, we're promoting all those different organizations who may not be promoting us. So, again, politics is one of the things that most definitely is a hindrance to, it especially does a disservice to our young people, because they are looking for any and everything they possibly can. I cannot tell you how many times young people will tell you what's going on with them, what they want, but they don't get listened to. The same way, you ask somebody a question of what you want to need, and then you just disregard everything they say. You know, it's definitely a weird dynamic, but it's just literally how things work here.
Youth will tell you what they need.
Yes.
Man.
They're not afraid to
And
tell
what
you.
they don't have, and who didn't care about them, and how to best support them. How should I support you? They will tell you. It's weird energy to not pay attention.
Yeah. So I would just say, just be more open and you know, educate yourselves and be more promotional about everything you know. Just spread the word.
I wanted to add, in regards to what my fellow panelists have said, when we're looking at the fact that our young people, I believe that they want to be involved. They just don't know how.
Absolutely.
At the same time, we can say, well, hey, go over here or go over there or go over there. They just don't know how to go ask sometimes for what it is that they may need. But another thing that I wanted to mention was, whomever you work for, you could work for the city, county, state, feds. You can work for a CBO, a YBO. You can work for a private organization. You could be a business owner. To each of you that's out in the audience and those that's watching online, my question to you, based upon where you're employed, what will you do to help a young person even understand what it means to have employment, to have gainful employment? To work a job, not just one day. I had an opportunity to be a part of a program called Inroads, a long time ago. This is when I was in high school. I'm not going to tell y'all the year because I'd be telling my age. Okay, but you had thank you, ma'am. You know, but you had Inroads, you had Upward Bound. We had these programs that was helping us gain, you know, some type of like. I'm proud of my resume. I don't want it to be too lengthy, but you know, hey, okay, I know what's on my resume. How many young people know how to do a resume? Is there something that you have, whatever skill set you have, where you can take your gift and invest it in that child? To where that child doesn't have to get in a stoli. To where that child doesn't have to smoke weed because they're not sure of what's gonna happen when they go to sleep at night. Things like this. You all hold the key. I'm pretty sure just about everybody in here is above the age of 21. I'm pretty sure y'all living your best life to the best way you can. But if you have a gift, why not invest it in a kid? Why not invest it in a child?
And the gift is simply time, because not only can we share with them, but anytime I'm with youth, they teaching me.
Yes.
Amen.
Whatever gifted talent they have, it's an exchange.
That's it.
And that's the respectability that is needed out here, this exchange of information and dialogue and thought, which Vaughn so eloquently described without saying what I just said.
Yeah.
That connection back and forth where they can give to you, too, and we can learn and grow and stretch is very important. And for those of us that no longer can learn anything, I ain't talking to y'all.
Come on, Simone.
For those of
Make
us
it
that
plain.
still are interested in learning new things and new ways of doing things and new ways of thinking, then that's an open invitation between you and that child. It's an exchange.
Yeah.
And everybody needs that. It's a validation that you provide with youth when you say, you offer me something too. I love when you taught me this, or can you help me again, or whatever.
Beautiful. I hope somebody on my team's taking notes so I can learn all this too. No. I'm going to skip the other questions I have because I have a stack of great questions, but I am going to add one other thing that I've noticed as a big deficit for adults as well as our young people is most people, adults or young, don't understand how local or city or state government work. And so when these decisions are being made about budget or policy or what's happening with the school board, no one goes. No one knows how to go. We're not taught it in school. It's not reinforced. Just like the fun things that we don't know exist, we certainly don't know about the boring things, the meticulous things, the 2-hour poor air conditioning things. And so I would challenge everyone here that does care about this, and there are a lot of folks here and online that care about this, to please figure out where your city meets, what those committees are, where your county meets, when your state representatives and senators are coming, because as much as we care in this room, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yeah.
And we need to reinforce that. And we need to take our young people there too, so that it becomes normal for them, so that they're not 55 figuring out this stuff. They are 13, 14, 20, being guided there by somebody, so that they are braver the first time that they have to go in the space and defend themselves before $1 million is invested into their punishment. So, so many questions. Where to begin? Props to those of you who write legibly. Minus points for me for leaving my reading glasses upstairs. Is there, this is like they read my mind here. Is there, do any of you have an idea for how you can, or how we can encourage people from the public to do two things here? One, and this is also referring to elected officials, get deciders like common council members and county supervisors to visit Vel Phillips and to visit places to connect with young people, because the people asking a couple of these questions are not certain that there is a connection with county supervisors and fellow council members and the young people that we serve. Is there some way that any of you might recommend that we could enhance that relationship so that decisions aren't being made out of context?
You gonna touch on it, Laura?
So the question is, how can we get them?
How can we get elected officials from the city and county to connect with young people? And do you know if it's so, and I'm taking three questions.
No. Okay, yep.
And are elected officials from the county and the city required to visit Vel Phillips in these places so that they know exactly what that is?
Yeah, so I'm going backwards. There is no requirement to do sort of anything by any elected official.
But they make the decisions, is that what we're talking about?
But we make the decisions. There's no requirement, but we make the decision. However, I'm gonna tell you the secret sauce to get your official to move on things is the people, right? So if I'm interested in education and I want my school board member, I'm going to call them, email. Listen, I'm gonna where are you gonna be, so that I can tell you what I feel and what my priorities are. So all of this, the short answer is, it's in the people. The people have to hold us accountable. I come from a space where I understand what accountability is, because I was on the outside looking in, be like, hold on a second. That's why it took me so long to become an elected official, because man, it's easy being on the outside. I wouldn't say necessarily easy being on the outside, but it's a different lens being on the outside, telling folks what to do, and then when they're on the inside, expecting them to move. But that's the job, right? I'm basing a lot of what I do based on what my constituents need. Folks want their roads done. They want to live in peace. They want, low property taxes, like all these things, right? So I'm using that lens to then move on things. It's going to be up to constituents to push their elected official to say, this is important to me, and I want you to be in these spaces because I care about this issue. So that's the beginning part of it, but that's the secret sauce. It's in the people, honey.
I also feel like, and this is like a thing of mine because I work with elected officials on different levels, trying to get them to work collaboratively and
What'd you say?
work collaboratively. Like the city and the city has one thing going, the county has one thing going, and the state has one thing going, and none of them know what each other got going, and it's like, what the hell are y'all doing? But the other thing is, we have to start pushing government to be different, because we should not be kind of having to come up to their level. There has to be that mid piece where, again, when you talk about innovation and doing stuff different, whether that's, at the county, I know people are doing like different committees that are involving stakeholders and different folks like that, but just having the access and having that ear to let them know, and for them to be open to the information of what's going on out here, what should we be doing. Like, one of the things that I'm pushing right now is for government to start working with our influencers, These are people who can bring out 5,000, 10,000 people or more, who have tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands and possibly millions of followers online, and they are influencing the people who are running, in our city. That is, you should be working with them. And we are in, but there's a fear, right? Because that isn't necessarily controlled, but these things are already happening. There are already people saying, hey, we're doing a pop-up concert here over X, Y, and Z in the middle of the night, and then that happens whether elected people are a part of it or law enforcement knows about it or not. But if that can be harnessed and controlled and supported, you help all those people that's connected to that, and you get to access to all those different people to potentially educate or give them the resources that they need. So finding that as a priority, and again, having the thought process to not see that as a thing to fear, but to see that as a thing to support and harness. Different things like that. Again, I love what the county and the Parks Foundation and all these different people are doing. They're so open to different and new things, right? And that has been a huge help, specifically because we do a lot of work in parks. But the normal processes don't necessarily work all the time. Right, and there are people who get burned out by the, I got an email and then I got to, schedule something with you, and that's it. If you even have time to schedule with me and all of that, which is why I exist, because people are like, I ain't heard from my alderman, or I ain't heard from this person, I need access to them. So I have to get on the phone and be like, hey, your constituent is making noise and they mad, that we should have a way of superseding those different,
And can I say, because Vaughn reminded me really quick of how we talk about doing government differently, there should be no way that we should be having community meetings before 4 o'clock, even before 5 o'clock. If we want community to come out, listen, I'm sorry, y'all, we already asking you to come down to City Hall. I hated going to any meeting downtown, because you already know it's downtown parking and traffic and all this stuff, right? But to ask you to come to a community meeting at 10 a.m.?
Yeah.
What? You can't even come virtually because you at work.
But it almost sounds like it's devised for less community connection and
It's being
collaboration.
comfortable though, Ms. Simone.
It is, but it's also designed.
Yes, ma'am.
It's also a very early design, which we're not going into the history.
Yep.
They're not. But this idea that it's designed not to have real stakeholders at the table is insane. Because we keep doing the same thing and getting the same results. We need to collaborate. We need to change times. We need to change tactics. We need to change the order of service.
Yes.
Again, I'm so tired of the same conversation.
You
with
would
the
think
same
they're
people.
doing it on purpose.
You would think.
You would think, Amelia.
I'm going to briefly editorialize on the question this other person has asked, but and this is a great question. So how do parents prepare their children and teens to navigate in our world without scaring or traumatizing them in an effort to teach them important issues that may not be taught in school? Driving, preparing and training them not only on driving, but what to do if pulled over by the police, how to navigate interactions with authority like teachers, white supremacy, and law enforcement.
Let y'all take that.
Yeah, psychologically is the thing. Now, psychologically, fear is something like Vanisha mentioned. We all have these components of fear. And generally, growing up, if my mother and father are terrified of dogs or puppies, I picked that up very early. Again, the secure attachment, this idea of the training being whatever that same-sex parent does psychologically. The amygdala not fully forming in folks into certain ages where I can make reasonable decisions for myself, which is a struggle for a lot of people. I'm 50 and I still struggle. I mean, it's just a real thing. So learning how to reasonably make decisions is a thing. This idea around, we know, both of my adult children are in school districts. My son is in Chicago public schools. My daughter's in Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama public schools. They both call me often because they're kind of struggling with some of the things we're talking about. And they call daily and say, Mom, thanks to you and Dad who ... But my role and my attention had everything to do with ensuring that the messaging they received was clear, concise, accurate, true, non-judgmental, that they had humility and compassion, but that they understood, specifically even now, for all of the negative stories we hear about Black and brown folks, let alone children, that my children understand that there's 12 to 13 or 15 positive stories to counteract that one. So I had access to positive stories about Black and brown children in my home every day, all the time, whether it's through magazines or articles, or Vaughn's son was doing something, so we went to support them. We had a community and an environment of people where you could teach the opposite, because again, the news is designed to make us all fearful of what's happening in our community. I'm not afraid of any neighborhood right now, never have been. I'm not afraid to be in certain places or around certain types of people, but I also have experienced so many different types of neighborhoods, so many different types of people. So exposure to positive imaging and positive experiences is also something that's going to counteract any of the fear that's happening. Now, I'm not saying don't teach caution, but selling your child fear is also setting them back and also really creating. I'm a trauma therapist, I said that too. But the thing is, I'm in session oftentimes with adults that are so fearful of what's happening in their lives currently and what's happening next, that we have to always do the worst to trace back, when did that fear first start for you? Most times, it is somebody else's narrative. Most times, I can say that most times I'm working with adults that are afraid of whatever is happening in their life, whatever changes, whatever medical situations, whatever financial, whatever. And this messaging and this fear is generally not them. It is something that their mother was afraid of, or their father, or they were warned about, or their best friend went through it, and so that's why I think it's going to happen to me. Most of our fears, this is research-based, are unrealistic. Won't happen to us and have nothing to do with it. People that don't go to the doctor because they're not telling me I have cancer. What?
Right.
You don't want to know if you should have got your finger fixed last year. I mean, some of this is not that. And so this idea of how this country in particular, in the political climate that sells fear, we have all kind of adopted this way of saying, oh, if I were you, I wouldn't go there. Oh, if I were you, I wouldn't do that. Oh, if I were you, well, you're not me. You're not me, and I'm not afraid of everything. And is that my narrative, or is it yours, or your mom's, or your father's? And then we're dealing with youth that are stumped. Again, we talked about disorganized chaos and environments that have no fears, because they've grown up environments where trauma has slapped them every which way. I've experienced everything. So I'm no longer afraid to fly down the street at 100 miles an hour. I'm not afraid of that pill that I've never seen before. I'm not afraid to have sex with somebody I don't know, or intimate partner violence, which is on the rise for our youth. I just wrote an article on that today because it's just bananas. We don't talk about that. But this idea of fear is not within them the way it's within us as adults. And so that's got to be all the way shifted in order for these connections to happen.
Can I add something to what you said? Because you said something and it made me go back to something where my mother was traumatized with something, if you watch your mom, hey, where my mother was traumatized with something. When I moved back home, that thing tried to attach itself to me. So what happened, I moved back from Alabama, and I got a job working in West Dallas. Don't know nothing about her at the time, didn't really know anything about West Dallas, didn't have a need to go to West Dallas. But I said, hey, for a job, I'm gonna go to West Dallas. My mom told me I was going to the store, and I was going to Sam's Club when it was open over in West Dallas. I was going to Sam's Club, and my mom said, why are you going over there? I said, because it's Sam's Club. And she said, but you're in West Dallas, you're on the south side. We don't shop on the south side. So immediately for my mother, that placed some fear in her that her baby is on the south side shopping. And I'm afraid of what's gonna happen to my baby because she over on the south side. But because of my mother's pain and her trauma, being born in the 50s, going through what she went through, living in the North Division neighborhood for so many years, and being a part of that, that housing, thing that was happening back then, there was so much that was happening where you didn't go to the south side. Now this is 2010, 2011. And that sat with me. Now, my mom is not afraid to go to the South Side. She will do her shopping because to her, you know, the color is green. But I had to tell my mother, I'm not looking at it from that perspective right now.
Yeah.
What happened then is what happened then. I refuse to go anywhere with fear in front of me or behind me.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's on the northwest side of me. I don't care if it's Menominee Falls. I don't care what it is. But because my mother had that thought, my baby is gonna get hurt. Somebody's gonna look at her, they're gonna look at her sideways because she's a black woman, because of the color of her skin, because of the trauma my mother dealt with when she was a child, when she was in high school, and the things that her mother had to experience coming from Mississippi. So that trauma was passed along. But I can be one to say I stopped that generational curse from even happening because I can go to the South Side. I can go to Franklin. I can go to Butler, just can't speed in Butler.
Not in Butler.
Can't speed in Butler. You got to drive the speed limit or under. But I'm saying all of that to Simone's point, when we're talking about trauma and how the trauma is passed along, that's something I had to mention because it is real.
It gives you an opportunity to search yourself daily, and so that's okay. It's okay if we're not perfect. It's okay. I just keep telling people it's okay for me to search myself to figure out what I need to straighten up today. And it's okay for me to learn how my daughter is one who brought it to my attention as a teen. Like, Mom, that's you. That's not my thing.
That's it.
So you have to learn that sometimes out of protection for ourselves or others, we do pass along this fear piece. And it is getting in the way of how we connect to our youth, how we actually influence them. And so I don't want my stuff in the way. It's a check. Check yourself and get it together so that we can do the work that we need to do.
That's it.
I always go back to perception and how we look at things, right? We live in a different time. And I say that because, for instance, we live in the United States of America, we live in the state of Wisconsin, we live in the city of Milwaukee. We're supposed to have a constitution that grants us certain rights, right? But you can look online, and I always had this conversation when people be like, what about the parents, and what are the parents teaching, right? Your child has more time and has more influences coming from the outside of your house than they have on the inside.
That's good, Ron.
Especially if you go to work and they going to school.
Big time.
You probably have a max 4 hours,
If you're lucky.
Maybe.
right,
Maybe.
to instill whatever it is day to day with your child. They have their friends, they have their teachers, they have whoever's at the job, and then they have the rest of the world where they're looking at online and otherwise, right? We live in a time where people pretty much can just make up whatever they want to be. You know what I mean? And that's confusing. And when you put the two things together about our children and the conversation, especially when dealing with law enforcement, right? You have instances where you can do everything right and it still not go right. Then you have instances where people be like, I know my rights, and they be wrong as hell. But because they know whatever rights they think they know, it don't go well, right? And so both things you can look at and be like, you can have whichever conversation you want, but at the end of the day, we got work to do to where these situations are less possible, right? And that is the focus of those conversations. I will have the entire conversation with my son about, and a lot of times I do, this is a situation, this is how I want you to look at it and the things that I believe you should be looking at, but it can also go this way, and it can also go this way, right? And so give them that totality. Because if you just give them one piece and they hearing all these other pieces, I'm telling you, man, it's crazy out there right now. You got people like, we ain't supposed to be drinking water, you know, and it's people listening to them. So when you have these conversations, and a lot of times with parents and people in the immediate circle, it's this weird thing that people have where you could tell somebody, your son or a family member, one thing, they will not listen to you. It has to come from somebody who they don't know.
That's it.
And it's because it's like, oh, that's just my mama. She talking. It's because my mama, you know, she just telling me this because. But we live in these times. So when you talk about having conversations and preparing people, I believe you just have to give them a more total conversation than just what you think, and expose them or give them the tools to understand that there are people who think different, and there are these other situations that you may encounter with these situations. Even though this is what I told you, it may look like this. And I mean, you can do the best that you can as a parent. And then, you know, again, as young people develop and become individuals and make their own decisions, then, you know, you can only do your part. So I just wanted to throw that in because we've dealt with that more recently here in the city, with instances of what's happening with young people in different situations and then it coming back to the parent.
Yeah.
We, you know, sadly, we're winding down on time, and I have like 20 questions, and I'm going to have to share some of those. And I have some other things to share, too. And before I read through some of these questions, we're not going to get a chance to answer them, but I want to honor them in this space because they're all thought-provocative. There's several in here. We could do another 90 minutes just on 2 of them. Also, for those of you here, for those of you watching online, if you want to learn what your rights are during law enforcement encounters, if you want trainings on how the federal, state, city, and county government work and who's in charge and how to access them. If you want trainings on structural implicit bias and conflict resolution, Turners do that. We're happy to go into schools for free, to nonprofits, college campuses. Podemos hacerlo en español. We can do it in English, and we do that regularly. And there are other groups that do that, but feel free to reach out. And I'll immediately call Vaughn and send him over to your, no. But we have a fantastic team that's all over. Some of these questions are hopeful that with the new maps and the amelioration of some of the gerrymandering, that it'll be hopeful that we can close Lincoln Hills and Copper Lake more quickly. We would love to explore opportunities to invest in our youth as opposed to incarcerating, asking how we provide safe spaces for our youth and how we can get them to join those spaces. Drawing attention to the fact that young men from all races and ethnicities are expressing more than ever now that they feel unseen. How do we address that? How do we, given the role of education in preventing violence, what steps are taken to improve the opportunity for this to be taught in schools, especially in vulnerable neighborhoods? Can any of you and the elected officials that are here in the audience or on the panel introduce budget amendments to redirect spending from MPD to real public safety and youth needs? What are the sources or hubs to find community events and programs or support other organizations, their lists and calendars? What are your personal thoughts on specific issues? One is the Bradley Tech incident. There's another incident. How can we introduce programs and expand the use of yoga and mindfulness education into our schools? We'll just dispatch you everywhere. And this we asked, and this was partially answered. There will be a follow-up to this, which will be in November after the election, which will be solutions to youth incarceration, touching upon some of this, and we'll let you all know when we have this. I want to thank all of you. Really, I love each of you. I love you collectively and what you're offering to this, and I'm so glad that so many of you have spent the evening here discussing this and watching online, and I know many more people will watch this as we go forward. And really, this is a big lift for all of us. I firmly believe that all of us have been called to build the beloved community, and no matter what, our young people are certainly the future. Mm-hmm. Yeah. People asked, we were just laughing upstairs, do you think, one day more Gen Z will be in elected office? Well, yes, because we're going to die, and they're in that position. Yes. I don't know what you mean by that question. But we have a lot of work to do to build the work in which our children, our young people, our children collectively can flourish. So I'm asking you all to get involved, to vote for people who will actually do something, to support, to find out how these mechanisms, if you do not understand how government works, it doesn't matter. It will still continue without you there. So please go get involved in these different things, or what we are sitting and discussing again in different iterations, as has been discussed 10 years ago, and 10 years before that, and 2 years before that, and we will see the reactions to the next horrible incident on the news. We need to come together and find some of these solutions, so please get involved. We can't be passive critics anymore. There's no space for the armchair critic to point his finger and say, oh, this person or that person. You need to roll up your sleeves, or shut up at this point, in my opinion. As part of our commitment to confronting mass incarceration, the Milwaukee Turners are working towards zero youth corrections as a part of a partnership with Milwaukee County DHHS, Children, Youth, and Family Services, and the Public Welfare Foundation, which is a private foundation to distribute money to organizations working to reimagine youth justice and create systems change. Round 3 of this process will begin soon, and we encourage you to use the sign-in sheet at the front to be kept up to date with zero youth corrections. Please save the date, which is October 29th, for our first forum of this season. We have, in collaboration with these wonderful groups, already 2 years in a row given out, distributed $400,000 each of those 2 years to groups that are reimagining through systems change and advocacy what our wrong solution of incarcerating children maybe more hopefully can be. We're also thrilled that our peer support program manager, Connie Calderon, is now offering free recovery support circles for young people and adults, including groups for 13 to 15-year-olds, 16 to 20-year-olds, and 18 and older. These kind of groups are rare in Milwaukee. Please pick up a flyer on your way out and spread the word. Many of you noticed, because we had such poor parking outside today, we also offer free yoga on Thursdays at 6, so pop in next week. We have 4 upcoming events we'd love to see you at. October 1st, the big vote right upstairs in the ballroom, a free nonpartisan concert upstairs that we're co-hosting with Wisconsin Voices. The event will be hosted by the multi-talented actor and musician Rotimi, known for his roles in popular TV series and his contributions to the music industry. Joining Rotimi will be Milwaukee's own Jasmine Tyler, a prominent community leader and advocate for civic engagement, and live performances by this guy right here. Scrappy, Ro James, Steve DeStoner, the MT Twins, Kia Rap Princess, Ray Nitty, DJ Sushi, Lore, Real Rich. And just look it up, Google it, go to Eventbrite for free tics. It's all there for you. We're also proud of a proud part of Doors Open Milwaukee this weekend, so stop by for a guided tour between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. And I'm asking you personally to come to this, because last week I rappelled a 15-story building as a fundraiser, and to draw attention to this, I'm still here. I was pretty sure I was going to splat. So we hope to see you this Saturday or Sunday. If you want to volunteer and give tours, we'll show you where the bodies are hidden. No, we took them out of the walls already. We have 3 funerary urns upstairs. But please come. It's free. It's wonderful. And there are many buildings in Milwaukee County where you can explore and see, and it's a great way to go outside. But before you do that, on the morning of the 28th, I hope to see you at 8 a.m. The Milwaukee Turners are also proud co-sponsors of Community Brainstorming, now in its 34th year. This topic will be political parties in power. Breakfast starts at 8 a.m. and the panelists from 9 to 11 a.m. at St. Matthew's CME on 9th and Locust. The breakfast is great. And October 5th, in partnership with our friends from Your Move MKE, we are co-hosting our 3rd Knights and Kings at 1107 West Historic Mitchell. Come for free shirt, suit, and tie fittings. There'll be chess and DJs, barbers, and clothes will be gifted to attendees. We anticipate seeing you there. Today's nonpartisan virtual forum was sponsored in part by the Milwaukee County Office of Equity, MICA, the Public Welfare Foundation, and the Hertzfeld Foundation. Once again, I'd like to thank our guests here at Turner Hall and on our live stream, our production team, especially Cheston VanHuss, Michaela, Jalise, and Loki, our co-producers, Chrissy and Jahan, our Confronting Mass Incarceration team, Mustafa and Emily, our staff, and our wonderful interpreters at DJC Interpreting, and the folks, Tapatio, that brought us these wonderful tacos. You can find out more about the Turners online. Please, please, before I say goodbye, a raucous round of applause for these wonderful visionaries. Our county, our city, I know we all share in this love. There are so many brilliant people that have so much care to give, have so much expertise. We need to connect with one another and reject the isolation, the fear, the ignorance, the apathy, the inertia, whatever it is that's preventing us. I am going to take a break and grab some tacos with these beautiful people over here. Smelling it has hurt me. Meet one another. This is a safe space. Judge Shelton, you're being called out by my board member.
I just wanted to say I appreciate all of you. You're helping to change the narrative about Milwaukee being where Milwaukee is on the map. And I hate the narrative about Milwaukee not being a good place for black people. I'm a judge. I'm Judge Danielle Shelton, and I'm a judge right here in Milwaukee County. One of the reasons I became a judge was because we have a serious problem with mass incarceration. And Milwaukee is one of the places that it's hurting our community, and we have to find places for our kids to be part of the community and be loved and welcomed. I can tell you that I, as a judge in circuit court, I'm a general felony judge, and how many of you knew we have a huge problem with fleeing in Milwaukee, right? Who doesn't know that?
Yeah.
Who knows that the law just in June changed from it being a 3.5-year felony to a 6-year felony?
Wow.
Do you think that makes a difference?
No.
It makes absolutely no difference. Who else knows that if you're under 18 and you're charged with a felony, you have a case in adult court and you also have a case in children's court? How much sense does that make?
Yep.
Right? So these are the kinds of things that we need to be talking to our kids about. There was a recent shooting, and I texted Charlene about it, because these guns are so readily available, and I think that we need to be doing a social media campaign about some of the dangers of, having a gun, of fleeing, of what could happen. I think there's a lot of people out there who could offer examples and and help educate our kids. And so these are just some of the things that I wanted to add to the conversation, because the conversation, we need to have it. We need to connect with each other. I can tell you, in probably 99% of the cases before me, I order community service, because I think that if kids, and I'm in adult court, but I'm seeing kids I saw 3 16-year-olds in adult court today. Wow. 16 years old. This is ridiculous. They should not be in adult court. I think that's another thing. We need to campaign about that, right? Talk to our legislatures about this. 16-year-olds do not need to be in adult court. But I send them to nonprofit organizations to do community service, because I want them to make these connections. It's hard. They get turned away. So we need to figure out how we can network with each other and make sure that if I send a kid to you, the phone's gonna be answered. They're gonna be saying, no, nobody's gonna say, oh no, you've got that open felony. No.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things that I just wanted to add.
I'm here and also
Thank you,
stay
Judge.
after and talk to the judge.
Yes,
You have
thank
many
you,
of you
Judge.
work with nonprofits. You're going to do some collab. And I also heard you volunteering to join a working group with us.
That's it.
All right.
That was good.